To truly love another or to attract love, self-love is really, really essential. So self-love can be defined as a deep, genuine appreciation and acceptance of yourself. It means recognizing your worth, treating yourself with kindness, and prioritizing your well-being. When you're prioritizing your well-being, it doesn't mean ignoring or disregarding others' needs. Instead, it allows you to show up fully for the people you care about. Hello, everyone, and we're going to talk about today is how love starts from within, cultivating self-love. And it's so important to think about this no matter what time of the year. But I wanted to record this specifically for Valentine's Day for 2025 because we're off to such a great start this year. And I feel like there's a lot of hope in the air. That's kind of what I'm noticing anyway. And so we're going to dive into self-love. All right. So to truly love another or to attract love, self-love is really, really essential. And I always think about my own experience in that, when I hit rock bottom in January of 1990, so that was 35 years ago, I didn't really know what self-love was. And I remember being in a therapist's office and I was doing therapy for the first time in my life, unpacking a lot of the trauma that I had dealt with as a child, which we all have. I just had some, pretty big stuff that needed to be dealt with. And I remember, just hearing the therapist telling me that, you need to work on self-love. And I was like, well, I love myself, of course, but I didn't really fully understand how self-love is so important. And, in the same time, I had been in a relationship. I was getting ready to get married to, somebody that I had been dating since I was 21. This is my ex-husband. We were married for 21 years, together for 25, and it was amazing. But during that time, both of us were really growing up. And for me personally, I know that part of the issues, some of the issues that we had in our marriage and our relationship, because we always have a part in it, no matter what the situation is, there's always a part in it. You always have a part in it. And I just really know, looking back that was, at first I was trying to change him, but what I realized was that, change has to happen from within, and that all I have control over is how I change myself, and that I can be the only one that changes my behaviors, and that I needed to focus on myself and make that my priority in my life. And so that's what I started to do. And, it was up and down. We ended up getting divorced. And during the year and a half that I'd been dating here and there, but was not in a serious relationship. But then I met my current husband, and, I was divorced for 1 month when we met. And while it's an ongoing practice of self-love, remember, I always talk about that on my show, is that everything that I talk about is a practice, right? None of this is one and done. It's something that you have to continually practice. But I do know that the work that I had done the prior 25 years before I met my husband, my current husband, I know that a lot of the work that I did allowed me to attract this incredible human being into my life. And, it's still a practice, but it's definitely has made my relationship so much better. So what is self-love? So self-love can be defined as a deep, genuine appreciation and acceptance of yourself. It means recognizing your worth, treating yourself with kindness, and prioritizing your well-being. So self-love involves embracing your strengths and acknowledging your imperfections, right? We all have them. We all have both. Setting healthy boundaries to protect your physical, emotional, and mental health, right? We're going to dive into all of these a little bit later. Showing yourself compassion, even when you make mistakes or fall short. Prioritizing your needs and happiness without guilt or fear of judgment. I need to remember that myself all the time. And lastly, cultivating habits that nourish your mind, body, and soul. So let's talk about what self-love is not, all right? Because I know at first, when I started on this journey, I was accused of being selfish because I was putting myself first. Self-love is not selfish at all, okay? What it means is prioritizing your well-being, so that, or when you're prioritizing your well-being, it doesn't mean ignoring or disregarding others' needs. Instead, it allows you to show up fully for the people you care about. So what I had to get through to the people that were in my life when I was like, no, I'm putting myself first, they didn't understand that. And it was like, well, in order for me to be a good wife, a good mother, a good daughter, a good friend, a good employee, a good fill in the blank, I have to take care of myself first, because then and only then can I show up for others in a way that's going to benefit them. Okay. So self-love is not narcissism. Okay. Narcissism is characterized by excessive self-focus and entitlement, often at the expense of others, right? So self-love, on the other hand, is rooted in humility, balance, and respect for both yourself and others. Okay. Self-love is not about perfection. It's not about trying to be flawless or constantly seeking improvement. Self-love accepts the human condition of imperfection and celebrates growth without self-criticism. Blah. I'm going to say that one more time. Self-love accepts the human condition of imperfection and celebrates growth without self-criticism. All right. And lastly, self-love is not just about pampering. All right. While self-care, like spa days or treating yourself to something special, is an aspect of self-love, self-love goes much deeper than that. Self-love is about emotional resilience. It's about self-awareness. And self-love is about choosing what's best for your long-term well-being. So I hope that makes sense. You know, self-care is critical. And you know what? Some days, the best thing that I can do when it comes to self-love, especially at the end of the day, is just to take a hot bath. So you're kind of taking care of a little bit of everything, right? So while spa days are incredible, I rarely do a spa day. Spa days for me are when I'm on vacation, and you know, I probably need to make that more of a priority, but I take such good care of myself, and I'm always doing spa nights for myself, and I do all sorts of rituals. So, you know, you just got to do what makes sense for you. All right. Next, I'm going to talk about signs to think about that kind of give you a clue that you may need to prioritize self-love. All right. These are really, really important. So, negative self-talk. All right. Do you frequently criticize yourself, call yourself names, or focused on your perceived flaws? Now, perceived is a big, big word right there, because you see, when we're criticizing ourselves, it's just a perception that we have. So I invite you to say, is it true? Right? Because I do that all the time, right? I'm like my own worst enemy, and I will be the first one to accept responsibility for that and acknowledge that. But it's kind of like, we say these things to ourselves, and yet, would you say that to a child? Would you say that to your younger self even? Would you say that to a little boy or a little girl who's sitting there crying? No, of course not, right? So why would you do that to yourself, right? Look, folks, I'm not making anybody wrong here. This is just called awareness, all right? I'm just putting all this out there for you guys to kind of just think about it, and like, don't beat yourself up. By all means, this is just awareness so that you can think about it, because it's a practice. So the more times that you can catch when you're being critical of yourself, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So as an example, you say to yourself, I'm so stupid, after making a mistake, instead of acknowledging, okay, this is a learning moment. All right, yeah, it was a silly thing that I did. Call it stupid, call it idiotic, call it what you like. But at the end of the day, you can learn from that, and you can stop yourself. Instead of saying, I'm so stupid, just be like, oh, whoa, this is a great learning moment for me to be like, you know what? It's okay. We all make mistakes, and be gentle with yourself. Another kind of red flag, if you will, another sign that will tell you that you need to prioritize self-love is if you're constantly seeking validation from others. All right. So are you relying on external praise or approval to feel good about yourself? So as an example, you feel unworthy or unloved if someone doesn't respond positively to you. All right. And I know, especially as women, I mean, let's just admit it, ladies, we can be overly dramatic about so much, call it hormonal, PMS, whatever, fill in the blank. But I know if you're anything like me, and I think I'm pretty normal, whatever that means, right? We kind of make a big deal about stuff when it doesn't need to be made a big deal out of. And so, you don't need that approval from somebody else. Yeah, it's nice. It's wonderful. But if you find yourself feeling unworthy because somebody doesn't respond positively, take a look at that. It's just worth kind of noting. You're like, what's that about? All right. Another area is difficulty setting boundaries. You feel guilty or afraid of saying no, even when you're overwhelmed or uncomfortable, right? So an example of that would be agreeing to take on more work or commitments at the expense of your own time or energy. We all do this. You just got to, learn to say no. And sometimes passing up that girls' happy hour or boys' happy hour, whatever, to take care of yourself and to rest and have a night off, maybe just a night by yourself, is going to bring you more value than being out in a bar drinking and having, meaningless conversations with people, right? Like, is that the best use of your time? So you just want to think about that. So putting others' needs above your own, all right? You habitually prioritize others at the expense of your mental, emotional, or physical well-being. So neglecting rest or self-care because you're busy helping others. So that's an example of that. I know for me, that was a big thing for me, especially last year when my mom, who I'd been taking care of since 2018, I put her in full assisted living. And so I didn't need to be there every single day helping her. My son graduated from college, and while he technically left the house 5 years ago, there was still that taking care. And I kind of found myself like, wow, who am I going to take care of now? Bingo. Yes. That was a big awakening last year in 2024. Was that, wow, now I don't have to take care of everybody else. It's just me. Yeah, I have my husband, I have a dog, but I can truly put myself first now. So next is feeling unworthy or undeserving, right? You struggle to accept compliments. You believe you deserve love or think sorry, I'm totally butchering this. You struggle to accept compliments, believe you deserve love, or think you're enough as you are. So that would be like dismissing kind words from other by saying, oh, it's nothing, or somebody thanks you, or I'm sorry, somebody says, I love what you're wearing, and you're like, oh, and you dismiss it. That was a big thing for me. That took me a very long time to learn. And finally I can just be like, oh, thank you. And sometimes I play along, oh yeah, if they knew how long I've had this outfit or whatever, but you don't have to say that. You just simply just say thank you. Perfectionism or fear of failure. These are huge, right? You feel you need to excel at everything to prove your worth or to avoid criticism. Maybe you avoid trying new things because you fear you won't be good enough, right? I struggle with this all the time. And as high achievers, a lot of times perfectionism and fear of failure is a huge thing when you're a high achiever. And so, these are just things to just take note of so that when it arises, you'll just have that information and then you can help yourself. This is a favorite one, comparing yourself to others. When you kind of measure your value by how you stack up against others, often feeling inadequate, right? Like scrolling through social media and thinking, why can't my life look like theirs? Okay, first of all, and I wrote about this in my book, if you're comparing yourself to another person and wishing that you had their life, you better be willing to accept all of the good that they have in their life and all of the bad. I have people say that to me, oh, I wish I had your life. And I'm like, let me tell you something, sister. I wouldn't wish my life on anybody, because what I've gone through up here, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemies. Okay. So you got to know that everybody has baggage, and everybody has a sense of craziness in their mind and in their life. Like, we all have issues, and it's so much easier just to accept your own baggage instead of wishing you had somebody else's good things and all their baggage, right? Because I promise you're not going to want anybody else's baggage. Next is burnout or overwhelm. You feel exhausted, emotionally drained, or like you're running on empty because you neglect your own needs, right? So if you're constantly pushing yourself without breaks until you feel completely depleted, that's an example of when you need to practice some self-love. Next is difficulty accepting mistakes or flaws, right? You feel ashamed or overly harsh toward yourself when things don't go perfectly. You beat yourself up for something minor instead of showing yourself compassion. All right, this kind of blends in with what I was talking about before. And lastly, do you ever feel disconnected from yourself, right? You don't take time to reflect, nurture your passions, or connect with what makes you happy. So an example would be not knowing what you truly want or need because you've been too focused on external demands. All right, so take the time to journal and really show up for yourself. All right, so why are these signs? Why do these signs matter? So these behaviors and thought patterns can slowly erode your self-esteem, happiness, and ability to form healthy relationships. All right, so when you prioritize self-love, and you do that consistently, it's going to help break these cycles, fostering greater emotional resilience, confidence, and fulfillment. All right, now we're getting to the good stuff. What are some simple ways to cultivate self-love, right? Practice self-compassion. Replace that negative self-talk with affirming statements. All right? Instead of calling yourself stupid, just be like, wow, that was a silly mistake. Let's flip that narrative around and focus on what I can do to correct that. Just Google, self-love affirmations. I have a bunch on my bulletin board that I look at all the time, and there's a bunch of them up there. And when I walk by it, I just kind of see which one I focus on, and I'm like, okay, whichever one I focus on, that must be what I needed to hear. You can also get a book, like a book of affirmations. And what I like to do with these is kind of hold it shut, put your hand on it, kind of pray for a minute and be like, okay, can you just show me what it is that I need to see today? What message do I need to hear today? And then I just randomly open it up, and whatever opens up, just put meaning into it, right? It's all your perception, right? It's your perception anyway. So you might as well put a good perception around and be like, okay, this is exactly what I needed to hear today. And that is what you focus on. Next is set healthy boundaries, right? Protect your energy by saying no when necessary, right? This was such a big one for me because, there's even a movie with Jim Carrey called Yes Man or something like that, where he just says yes. And I've heard people do that they just say yes, but you got to be careful with that because you can't overcommit. And when you overcommit yourself, that is an act of self-destruction, not an act of self-love. Because when we're overcommitted, there's no time for us, right? At the end of the day, there's nothing left in your cup. And life is too short to finish every day where you're just completely depleted, all right? So set those healthy boundaries. Next is prioritize self-care. This includes physical exercise and nutrition, your emotional state, which would be journaling or therapy or talk to a motivational coach, and then spiritual, which can be meditation, prayer. There's lots of different ways, just taking a walk in nature, sitting on a bench in a park without your cell phone and just contemplating life. Sitting on my deck while it's pouring down rain during a thunderstorm, especially. I love that. And just listening. And you don't even have to close your eyes. You can almost do like an open eye meditation, just watching the rain, and you'd be surprised what shows up when we just take that time, and Hey, set an alarm on your phone and just say for the next 10 minutes, for the next 5 minutes, just give yourself 5 minutes. We all have 5 minutes, right? Just sit for 5 minutes. Just take that time. But I can't emphasize enough the importance of exercise and nutrition, because when we exercise, not only is that is a huge act of self-love, but when you're exercising, you're getting those endorphins going. So it's going to reduce your stress. And boy, it is the quickest way to feel really amazing. Nutrition is also important. If you're eating a lot of like a carb heavy diet, carbohydrates, and I'm not a nutritionist, but I know enough to at least talk about it on a very, very high level. When you're eating a lot of carbs, your sugar spikes, right? And when that sugar spikes, it then crashes and then you feel tired. That's what a food coma is. So that's so important. We are truly what we eat. I hear my friend Craig Bruce say this every time I have a cup of coffee. Hydrate before you caffeinate, right? Waking up in the morning, drinking 8 ounces of water before you take that cup of coffee, or even better, honey lemon tea. Just warm up some hot water, put squeeze a half a lemon in there and a teaspoon of honey. Local honey, grown wherever you live is the best. But there's lots of great honeys out there, so you don't have to do that. But honey lemon water, oh my gosh, I don't have all the benefits in front of me, but Google the benefits of drinking honey lemon water first thing in the morning. It activates your digestive system, and it just does a whole slew of other things. So that's really, really, really critical. All right, enough about that. Next is embrace your unique qualities, right? Celebrate your strengths and what makes you special. We all have unique qualities and strengths that only you possess, right? You're the one that makes those strengths so special. And we're all just this living being creature of just amazing qualities. So celebrate it every day. And I think I talked about this on my last solo one because we were talking about goals. And it's so important to celebrate those wins every single day. And by celebrating your wins, what you're doing is you're just reinforcing that positive behavior. And as you keep doing this, because I talked about this in my last solo episode, as you keep reinforcing that behavior, that's how you make things a practice. Okay. So last but not least is forgive yourself and let go of the past. Release that guilt or shame and learn from those mistakes. This is the hardest act of self-love that you can give yourself. Forgiveness, remember, is not about the other person. Forgiveness is for yourself. You forgive yourself to make sure that other person isn't taking up space in your head, right? Because if you're holding on to resentment toward another person, all you're doing is giving your power away. That's all you're doing. You are giving your power away if you're not forgiving yourself and if you're not forgiving another person. The past is the past. Let it go. It's back there, right? We can't live our life looking in the rearview mirror, right? That's why you've got this big windshield in front of you. I've heard so many speakers on stage talk about this, right? Why do you think our windshield is so big when you're driving a car? Because that's what's important, what's in front of us. That's the present moment. Our rear view mirror is really tiny. It's just this little thing that we look up and we see him back. It's enough to just make sure you're safe, but you don't need to hang out there, right? You don't drive your car looking in the rearview mirror, right? We'd be having accidents left and right. It would be a disastrous out there if everybody was driving looking in the rearview mirror. Well, folks, that's what we do, myself included. Okay. Again, I'm not making anybody wrong. This is just for awareness so that you can be aware of it and deal with it, so that you have a better life, in this, we're not getting this day back. So looking in the rearview mirror is not solving anything. And quite frankly, once something has happened in the past, you got to deal with the emotions. You've got to deal with the pain of it. You've got to deal with the forgiveness part. You've got to deal with, letting go of resentments. If that's the case, if another person was involved, deal with those resentments. And we want to get to a point with anything that happens in your life because once it's happened, it's in your past. It's so important to get to a place in your life where you can look at these things. I say this all the time, where that happened for you, not to you. Things don't happen to us. They do. Yeah, they do. In the moment, they're happening to us. But it's important to get past that and be like, that happened for me. Because in that thing that happened to you, there's so many learning opportunities and ways to grow as a human being. And that's, what else do we have while we're here than growth, right? Change. Change is our superpower. Growth is your superpower. Getting past it all, being able to look at all of that garbage that happened to you in your life and looking at it with neutrality. It happened. It's neutral. I don't have a happy, sad, doesn't matter. It's just neutral. It happened. It is what it is. That's our goal. That's if you can learn to do that, boy, you're going to be ahead of the game so much quicker than so many other people. All right. Lastly, how does self-love transform relationships, right? So we want to attract healthier relationships, and you want to set the standard for how you're treated, right? Because, I heard this years ago, we teach people in life how to treat you, right? Or you teach people in life how to treat you. And so what that means is, if I'm dismissive to my husband and I'm doing it all the time and I'm just dismissing him and I'm not validating his feelings, guess what? I'm teaching him to do that to me, right? Because that's how I'm treating him. Not good. But another part of that is if you're not treating yourself and you don't love yourself, you're probably more apt to attract a person who also needs to work on self-love, but you may also attract maybe more of a narcissist in your life or somebody that, feels that you need to put them on a pedestal, right? Do you have anybody in your life like that, right? Chances are, not always, but I'm just going to give you a thought to ponder. Maybe if you're in a relationship where somebody thinks that you need to put them on a pedestal, why don't you take a look at yourself? How are you showing up that's giving that person the idea or the sense that they can treat you like that, right? Relationships are meant to be give and take. Relationships are meant to be a team. We're there for each other. Relationships are not 50-50. Sometimes it's 70-30. Sometimes it's 60-40. Sometimes it's 80-20. Sometimes, like 6 months after I got married and my husband was in the hospital for a total of 60 days. Yeah, 60 days. They didn't think he was going to live. At that point, it was like 1%, 99. He only had about 1% to give, barely. And I had to give 99%, and that's okay, right? So that's what I'm talking about. So in order to be able to be in that healthy relationship where it is a team, a cohesive team, where you're there for each other, it's a give and take. Sometimes you're taking care of them, sometimes they're taking care of you. That's what a normal, healthy relationship is, right? So self-love will transform your relationship because you're going to be able to give and receive love authentically, right? That's what we want. We want that authentic love with another human being. And that can only happen in that give and take. But it requires a self-love of yourself and your partner to have that healthy sense of self-love as well. So it's also going to help you have a deeper connection with others when you're secure in yourself. Because when you're secure in yourself, in your own skin, and you've taken your power back and you're owning that, and you love yourself and you're respecting your boundaries and you're truly taking care of you, right? You're able to have that deep connection with another person. And men and ladies and gentlemen who may be in an unhealthy relationship, you start loving yourself, you're going to start looking like, I don't deserve to be treated the way this person's treating me, right? So it can also bring up that, So I share all this with you on Valentine's Day because I want you to just understand the importance of self-love and how it is the foundation for a fulfilling life and fulfilling relationships. So I encourage you today to take one small action to show yourself some self-love, right? So for one of the things that you can do is remember how great it feels, right? When you see one of your friends and your friend's like, oh, I nailed that presentation, or I got a raise, or I got that job I've wanted. What do you do when you see them? You give them a high five, right? Doesn't that feel amazing when you give another person a high five? Well, you can do that with yourself too, right? I always encourage my clients to look in the mirror and say, I love you. That's not always easy to do. But maybe if you can't look in the mirror and say, I love you, maybe you can look in the mirror and give yourself a high five and just be like, good job. That was great today. You did a good job today. My coach that I work with has suggested that I stand naked in front of the mirror for 5 minutes and tell myself I love you. I promise to my audience all the time that I'm going to show up authentically. I haven't been able to do that just yet, and that's okay. That's okay. Could be the ADD. That's just making an excuse for myself, but that's a hard thing for me. I can look in the mirror and say I love you. I'm still working on standing naked in front of the mirror for 5 minutes, sending myself love. All right? It's progress, not perfection. So, folks, I hope that you will take this to heart and think about, loving yourself from within, because it really does start with you. Everything starts with you. All right? So thank you so much for listening today. And if you enjoyed this, please let me know. I'd love to hear your feedback, and I'd love to take your questions. Is there anybody in particular that you would like me to interview? What are some questions that you'd like me, to dedicate a whole episode on? Just let me know. You can reach me either on Instagram or Facebook Messenger. Just send me a note and just let me know that you've listened to my podcast and that you'd like me to talk about this, or you'd like me to interview this person, whatnot. Or you can send me an email to Sandee@sandeesgarlata.com. You can also go to happinesssolve.com, and there's a contact form that you can fill out and send it to me, and I can respond there as well. Whatever works for you. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I hope that your day is filled with lots of love and that you and your loved ones are happy and healthy. Take care, everyone.